Welcome back. I've got more figures to do. I think I'm going to be doing figures for a while, which is completely cool. I'm learning a lot from it. The next one up I have is an eBay find. No manufacturer, just 3D printed in resin. This is the Prehistoric Witch Huntress. Uh, Hopefully that's going to be in focus for you. So it's a bust, and it comes with a skull hat that fits on like so, and there are a couple of horns that are in this little baggie, but they're really teeny tiny, so I'm not going to pull them out right now. But it's a little more spicy than I usually do. I might make something to cover her up a little bit. It also doesn't have a base. So I'm going to have to make a base for this to sit on, which I can probably do with Sculpey. But we'll see. Anyway, so Prehistoric Witch Huntress. This is the next adventure. Assembly was pretty straightforward. Using Zap-A-Gap super glue and Instaset accelerator, I first glued the two fangs into the skull headdress. Later, I glued the headdress down to the head. And the last thing, which unfortunately happened off camera, I glued the whole figure into the base. Because I've decided to do this model with very pale, fair skin and red hair, I decided to go ahead and use Tamiya white surface primer. I started off the base coat for the skin with some AK basic skin tone and add to that just a touch of Vallejo model color Calvary brown. To ensure I got good coverage, I did a second light coat on the base coat of AK basic skin tone and Vallejo model color Calvary brown. My plan for the flesh tones is to work from the darker tones up to the highlights. And I've decided to go ahead and use a wet palette. I've used one before, but it's still a new thing to me, so I'm going to continue experimenting. For the paints, I'm using AK basic skin tone, a little tiny bit of the Vallejo model color Calvary brown, and some of the Vallejo model color cream white. And I'm just going to keep working my way up to brighter and brighter colors. Continuing on with my wet palette and with the same colors, the AK basic skin tone, the Vallejo model color Calvary brown, Vallejo model color cream white, and Vallejo model color ivory. And I'm going to keep getting lighter and lighter and with very, very thin coats to get some subtle shading. On the skin tones, I'm continuing on with the AK Basics skin tone, Vallejo model colors ivory, cream white, Calvary brown, and to that I'm adding just a hint of old rose. I'm still continuing to build the layers up from dark to light, so it's going to take a while. I continue doing some work on the skin tone, and for the lips, to everything else, added just a little tiny bit of the Vallejo model color Calvary brown. So I just did some Vallejo model color ivory on the eyes, and I'll be going back and forth between the eyes and the skin tone now, just to probably end up cleaning up some things as I go. but eyes are really hard. For the iris, I did just a tiny bit, a little tiny dot of Vallejo model color Infantry blue. Continuing with the eyes, to do the lighter color of the iris, I used Vallejo model color Deep Sky Blue. To do the pupil, I used Vallejo model color Black. And to get the little reflection that you see in eyes, just a little dot of Tamiya flat white. Because eyes have tears that make them moist, I use some Tamiya clear to give it a little more of a natural glossy look. I started working on the hair, and for that I used Vallejo model color Calvary brown as a base coat. On the hair I did a mid-tone with a combination of Vallejo model color Calvary brown and bright orange. So I did the final highlight on the hair, at least I think it's the final highlight on the hair, with mostly Vallejo model color bright orange with just a touch of the Calvary brown. To do the base coat on the fur, I used Panzer Ace's dark rubber mixed with Vallejo model color German camouflage black brown. On the fur, I next did a mid-tone of Panzer Ace's light rubber and Vallejo model color leather brown. I started working on the base coat for the necklace, and for the leather strap or thong, I used Vallejo model color leather brown, and for the medallion itself, I used Vallejo model color new wood. To do the highlight on the leather thongs, I used Vallejo model color pale brown. To continue with the medallion, I used Vallejo model color new wood, gold brown, and scale color intense ochre. To finish up the medallion, I started off with some Vallejo model color gold brown mixed with cream white, and then slowly moved from darker to lighter and just did some highlights with mostly the cream white to get it pretty close to where I want it. I think that's going to be about where it's going to stay. I might add a little more highlight, but that's going to be about it. For the base coat on the skull, I used Panzer Ace's light rubber and a little tiny bit of Vallejo model color German camouflage black brown. To build up layers of color, I did a dry brush on the skull with Vallejo model color cream white, pale brown, and ivory. Before I got too further along with the highlights on the skull, I wanted to get into those recesses. To do that, I used a wash with a combination of Panzer Ace's German tank crew and Vallejo model color German camouflage black brown. To do the highlights on the skull, I first did a dry brush with the Vallejo model color cream white, ivory, and just a slight touch of the pale brown. Got that done, and just to do just a tiny bit more highlighting, I used just the pure Vallejo model color ivory to get the final highlights. I moved on to do the leather headband on the skull headdress. And for that, I'm doing a base coat of Vallejo model color German camouflage black brown. Continue on with the headband on the skull headdress. I did a little bit of mostly dry brushing with Vallejo model color leather brown. I say mostly because I dry brushed over the raised areas, but went back just a little bit to fill in some of the areas to get a little coverage, leaving a little bit of the previous uh, German camouflage black brown for shadow. But I wanted to get a little more coverage than the dry brush would allow. To do the highlights on the headband on the headdress, I used Vallejo model color pale brown. I was looking at the skull of the headdress and it was looking a little too gray, so I did another dry brush with Vallejo model color Ivory, and I think that got it where it needs to be. This did not come with a base, so I need to make one, and for that I'm tinkering around with some original Sculpey. Now, I'm thinking this probably needs to have kind of a stone thing to it because it is prehistoric, and she is the prehistoric witch huntress. So I'm going with stone. We'll see what happens. To paint the base, I did a base coat with Panzer Ace's dark rubber, and then came back and did a little stippling with Vallejo model color Calvary brown and a bit of black, and did a final dry brush with a Panzer Ace's light rubber. Often with artistic endeavors, you don't get to perfection, but you get to a place where you're going to live with it. Such is the case with our prehistoric witch huntress. And hopefully this will be in focus for you. I'm needing more practice with figure painting, and this certainly provided that. So there was the hardest part was the eyes. I'm not going to lie. The eyes are not where I would like them to be, but I'll continue to work on that. Otherwise, I'm happy with the hair, the skull, the skin tone, and yeah, this is not safe for work, but and I usually don't go for stuff like that. I didn't realize that she was going to be out in the breeze like that, the way she is, because that was hidden in the eBay listing. But, okay. I'll live with it. So, anyway, here she is, the prehistoric witch huntress. It is done, and I may take a little bit of a break from doing figures. I've got a couple other projects that I need to get to, but I'm going to come back to figures in a bit because I think it's an area where I can continue to grow, especially eyes. I really need to get some practice on eyes. So anyway, there she is. Thanks for joining me.